Again, verses were read or dialogues listened to which extravagance took the place of wit. After that, Paris, the celebrated mime, represented the adventures of Io, the daughter of Inachus. To the guests, and especially to Ligia, unaccustomed to such scenes, it seems that they were gazing at miracles and enchantment. Paris, with motions of his hands and body, was able to express things apparently impossible in a dance. His hands dimmed the air, creating a cloud, bright, living, quivering, voluptuous, surrounding the half-fainting form of a maiden shaken by the spasm of delight. That was a picture, not a dance, an expressive picture disclosing the secrets of love, bewitching and shameless. And when the end of Corybantes rushed in and began a Bacchic dance with girls of Syria to the sounds of cithara, lutes, drums, and cymbals, a dance filled with wild shouts and still wilder license, it seems to Ligia that living fire was burning her, and that a thunderbolt ought to strike that house, or the ceiling fall on the heads of those feasting there. But from the golden net fastened to the ceiling any roses fell, and now half-drunken Vinicius said to her, I saw thee in the house of Aulus at the fountain. I was it was daylight, and I thought this thing that no one saw thee, but I saw thee, and I see thee thus yet, though that peplus hides thee. Cast aside the peplus like Crispinilla. See, gods and men seek love. There is nothing in the world but love. Lay thy head on my breast and close thy eyes. The pulse beat oppressively in Lydia's hands and temples. A feeling sides her that she was flying into some abyss, and that Vinicius, who before had seemed so near and so trustworthy, instead of saving, was drowning her toward it, and she felt sorry for him. She began again to dread the feast and him and herself. Some voice like that of Pomponia was calling yet on her soul. Oligia, save yourself. But something told her that it was too late, that the one whom such a flame had embraced as that which had embraced her, the one who had seen what was done at the feast, and whose heart had beaten at hers, at, as hers had passed, as had passed through her when he approached, was lost beyond recovery. She grew weak. It seemed at moments to her that she will faint, and then some terrible will happen. She knew that, under penalty of Caesar's anger, it was not permitted any one to rise till Caesar rose. But even were that not the case, she had not strength now to rise. Meanwhile, it was far to the end of the feast yet. Slaves brought new courses and filled the goblets incessantly with wine. Before the table, on a platform open at one side, appeared two athletes to give the guests a spectacle of wrestling. They began the struggle at once, and the powerful bodies, shining from olive oil, formed one mass. Bones cracked in their iron arms, and from their set jaws came an anonymous gritting of teeth. At moments it was heard the quick, dull thump of their feet on the platform strewed with saffron. Again they were motionless, silent, and it seemed to the spectres that they had before them a group chills out of stone. Roman eyes followed with delight the movement of tremendously exerted backs, thighs, and arms, but the struggle was not too prolonged, for Croton, a master and the founder of a school of gladiators, did not pass in vain for the strongest man in the empire. His opponent began to breathe more and more quickly. Next, a rattle was heard in his throat. Then his face grew blue. Finally, he threw blood from his mouth and fell. A thunder of applause greeted the end of the struggle, and Croton, resting his foot on the breast of his opponent, crossed his gigantic arms on his breast, and cast the eye of a victor around the hall. Next appeared men who mimicked beasts and their voices, ball players and buffoons. Only a few persons looked at them, however, since wine had drunkard the eyes of the audience. They feast by degrees into a drunken revel and a dissolute orgy. The Syrian damsels who appear at the first in the Bacchic dance mingle now with the guests. The music changed into a disorder and wild outbursts of citharas, lutes, Armenian cymbals, Egyptian sistras, trumpets, and horns. As some of the guests wished to talk, they shouted at the musician to disappear. The air filled with the odor of flowers and perfume of oils with which beautiful boys had sprinkled the feet of the guests during the feast, permeated with saffron and exhalation of people, became stifling. Lamps burned with a dim flame. The wreaths dropped sidewise on the heads of the guests. Faces grew pale and were covered with sweat. Vitellius rolled under the table. Nihidia, stripping herself to the waist, dropped her drunken childlike head on the breast of Lucan, who drunk in like degree fell to bloom in the golden power of her hair, and raising his eyes with immense delight. Pestinus, with the stubbornness of intoxication, repeated the 10th time the answer of Mopsus to the sealed letter of the proconsul. Tullius, who revealed the gods, said with drawling voice, broken hiccoughs, is the spheres of Xenophanes is round, then consider such a god might be pushed along before one with the foot, like a barrel. But Domitius, after, a hardened criminal and informer, was indignant at the discourse, and through indignation spilled Falernian over his whole tunic. He had always believed in the gods. People say that Rome will perish, and there are some even who contend that it is perishing already. And surely, but if that should come, it is because the youth are without faith, and without faith there cannot be virtue. People have abandoned also the strict habits of former days, and it never occurs to them that Epicureans will not stand against barbarians. As for him, he was sorry that he had lived to such times, and that he must seek in pleasures to refuge against the grief which, if not met, will soon kill him. When he had said this, he grew toward the Syrian dancer and kissed her neck and shoulders with his toothless mouth. Seeing this, the consul Maminius Rugulus laughed, and raising his bald head with wrath, augury exclaimed, "Who says that Rome is perishing? That's folly. I, a consul, know better. Vidian consuls, 30 legions are guarding our Pax Romana." Here he puts his fist to his temples and shouted, in a voice heard throughout the triclinium, 30 legions, from Britain to Parthian boundaries. But he stopped on a sudden, and putting his finger to his forehead, said, "As I live, I think there are 32." He rolled under the table, and began soon to send forth flamingo tongues, roast and shelled mushrooms, locusts in honey, fish meat, and everything which he had eaten or drunk. But the number of the legions guarding Rome peace did not pacify Domitius. No, no, Rome must perish, for faith in the gods was lost, and so were the strict habits. Rome must perish, and it was a pity, for still life was pleasant there. Caesar was gracious, wine was good. Oh, what a pity! And hiding his head on the arm of a Syrian bacchanal, he burst into tears. What is the future life? Achilles was right. Better be a slave in the world beneath the sun than a king in Asimirian regions. And still the question whether there are any gods, since it is unbelief, is destroying the youth. Lucan meanwhile was blowing all the gold powder from Nydia's hair, and she being drunk had fallen asleep. Next he took wreath of ivy from the vase before him, put them on the sleeping woman, And when he has finished, looked at those present with a delight and inquired glance. He arranged himself in ivy too, repeating in a voice of deep conviction, "I'm not a man at all, but a fawn." Petronius was not drunk, but Nero, who drank a little at first out of regard for his heavenly voice, emptied goblet after goblet toward the end and was drunk. He wanted even to sing more of his verses, this time in Greek, but he had forgotten them, and by mistake sang an ode of Anacreon. Pythagoras, Diodorus, and Terpnos accompanied him, but failing to keep time, they stopped. Nero, as a judge and as an aesthete, was enchanted with the beauty of Pythagoras and fell to kissing his hands in ecstasy. Such beautiful hands I've seen only once, and those were they. Then placing his palm on his moist forehead, he tried to remember. After a while, terror was reflected on his face. Ah, his mother, Agrippina's. A gloomy vision seized him forthwith. "They say," said he, "that she wanders by moonlight on the sea around Baie and Bauli. She merely walks as if seeking for something. When she comes near the boat, she looks at it and goes away. But the fisherman on whom she has fixed her eye dies." "Not a bad theme," said Petronius. But Vestinius, stretching his neck like a stork, whispered mysteriously, "I do not believe in the gods, but I believe in spirits. Oi!" Nero paid no attention to the words and continued, "I celebrated the Lemuria. I have no wish to see her. This is the 5th year I had to condemn her, for she sent assassins against me, and had I not been quicker than she, ye will not be listening tonight to my song." "Thanks to be Caesar, in the name of the city and the world," cried Dominus after. "Wine, and let them strike the tympans." The uproar began anew. Lucan and old Ivy, wishing to outshout him, rose and cried, "I'm not a man, but a fawn. And I duel in the forest. You." Caesar drank himself drunk at last. Men were drunk, and women were drunk. Vinicius was not less drunk than others. And in addition there was a roast in him, besides desire, a wish to quarrel, which happened always when he passed the measure. His dark face became paler, and his tongue stutters when he spoke in a voice now loud and commanding. "Give me thy lips, today, tomorrow, it is all one. Enough of this. Caesar took thee from Aulus to give thee to me, dost understand? Tomorrow about dusk I will send for thee, dost understand? Caesar promised thee to me before he took thee. Thou must be mine. Give me thy lips. I will not wait for tomorrow. Give me thy lips quickly." And he moved to embrace her, but Acte began to defend her, and she defended herself with the remnant of her strength, for she felt that she was perishing. But in vain did she struggle with both hands to remove his hairless arm. In vain, with a voice in which terror and grief were quivering, did she implore him not to be what he was, and to have pity on her. Sated with wine, his breath blew around her nearer and nearer, and his face was there near her face. He was no longer the former kind Vinicius, almost dear to her soul. He was a drunken, wicked satyr, who filled her with repulsion and terror. But her strength deserted her more and more. In vain did she bend and turn away her face to escape his kisses. He rose to his feet, caught her in both arms, and drawing her to his breast, began panting to press her pale lips with his. But at this instant a tremendous power removed his arms from her neck with as much ease as for they had become the arms of a child, and pushed him aside like a dried limb with a withered leaf. What happened? Vinicius rubbed his astonished eyes, and saw before him a gigantic figure of the legion, called Ursus, whom he had seen at the house of Aulus. Ursus stood calmly, but looked at Vinicius so strangely with his blue eyes that the blood stiffened in the veins of the young man. Then he, giant, took his queen on his arms and walked out of the triclinium with an even, quiet step. Acted that moment and went after him. Vinicio sat for a twinkle of an eye as if petrified. Then he sprang up and ran toward the instrument, crying, Ligia! Ligia! But desire, astonishment, rage, and one caught the legs from under him. He strained once and second time, seized the naked arm of one of the bacchanals, and began to inquire, with blinking eyes, what had happened. She, taking a goblet of wine, gave it to him with a smile in her mist-covered eyes. Drink, says she. Vinicius drank and fell on the floor. The greater number of guests were lying under the table. Others were walking with tottering treads, throwing the triclinium, while others were sleeping on couches on the table, snoring or giving forth the excess of wine. Meanwhile, from the golden network roses were dropping and dropping on those drunken consuls and senators, on those drunken knights, philosophers, and poets, on those drunken dancing damosels and patrician ladies, on that society all dominant as yet but with the soul gone from it, on that society garnered and ungirdled but perishing. Dawn had begun out of doors.